Тиша лахдош делча ховицва сеищат, хоца гушхан ялча, сатида мехтигба. Bisanana barakho de halati suqa, hoseicha qesticha, soholcha khiluqa. Bisanana barakho de halati suqa.
The Chechen region was created in November 1920 by the Bolsheviks. 96% of Chechenya's population is Muslim. Within Russia, Chechnya is considered one of the most Islamic areas, and they mainly follow Sunni Islam practices. The Republic of Chechnya has a history of violence and wars, one of the most famous ones being in 1994 when Russian troops invaded Chechnya. This war resulted in many lives being lost and many citizens of the Republic being displaced. Although peace treaties were signed in 1997, another war broke out in 1999. The Russians have blamed the Chechens for a bombing that took the lives of many civilians. This war continued until 2009 when more peace treaties were signed. However, Chechnya still sees violence throughout their country today.
The Chechen identity today cannot be analyzed outside its Islamic context. Due to its isolated position in the Caucasus Mountains, the Chechens received little influence from the outside world and were nominally Muslim. However, when Tsarist Russia began its colonization of the Caucasus regions, the Chechens and their relationship with Islam became more radicalized. Chechnya has a strong belief in Islamic mysticism or Sufism. During the period of the USSR, its anti-religious movements only served to strengthen the Sufi orders of indigenous Chechens. During Gorbachev's period of glasnost, mosques were reopened and prayer and ceremony were held out in the open. In Chechnya, nationalism and Islam go hand in hand, and during the war, the republic used Islamic slogans and symbols to inspire and advance their cause. For the Chechens, Islam became the antithesis to everything Marxist and Soviet, and their struggle for independence became known as jihad. The modern Russian state is desperately trying to characterize the Chechen separatist movement as an act of global Islamic terrorism, which is inherently false. Chechen's struggle for independence lies in its indigenous culture, politics, and nationalism.
Of all 21 Russian Federation republics, Chechnya holds the greatest amount of autonomy. The leader of the republic is currently Ramzan Kadyrov, who has been in power for over 10 years. Kadyrov portrays himself as an advocate for Russian multi-ethnic unity. Despite this, he creates further division and racial strife among the Muslim population. The Russian power vertical has turned a blind eye to this growing conflict. Chechnya's economy is dependent upon natural resources. The Grozny oil refining industry makes up to 7% of Russia's total production. Chechnya has access to the Black and Caspian Sea, which are prime trade routes. Both of these aspects make Chechnya an extremely valuable asset to Russia's national economy. It is currently estimated that about 85% of Chechnya's budget is dependent on transfers from Moscow. Russia issues strict control over Chechnya's revenue, which restricts regional growth and makes them dependent on government subsidies in order to survive. Effects of this include poverty amongst Chechens and skyrocketing unemployment rates reaching up to 36.7%.
Putin's relations with Kadyrov are excellent. Kadyrov is basically Putin's henchman. Kadyrov is Putin's enforcer. He enforces law and order of a sort in Chechnya, and does it with a very heavy hand, very brutally. So he's sort of a subcontractor. The relationship, as I understand it, is that Putin just says, "Okay, Kadyrov, you can go ahead and you rule Chechnya however you want. Kill whoever you want to keep order. I'll have a hands-off policy."
In the realm of political subjugation, the Russian government wants to exert as much political control over Chechnya as possible. This has led to a massive wave of internet and social media monitoring by Ramzan Kadyrov. The Kadyrovsi, Kadyrov's private army, increased control by eliminating the political and social threats spread through the internet by threatening torture, kidnapping, and murder. To instill fear, the Kadyrovsi dump bodies of people who post anything anti-Kremlin on the internet deep within the northern Caucasus and place increased surveillance upon their family members. Kadyrov has been accused of committing mass human rights violations, such as engaging in harassment, persecution, and ethnic cleansing against the Chechens. In 2019 alone, security officials executed over 27 Chechens without trial, and the Russian government refused to investigate any of these cases. Putin's logic is that if he sees no problem, there is no problem. Thus, if Kadyrov ethnically cleanses the Chechens, then the Chechens are no longer a problem to Russia.
The culture of Chechnya has two primary motivators: Sunni Islam and the strength of the people. Political leader Ramzan Kadyrov believes in the superiority of the Chechen people and has praised his leadership in asserting the dominance of the Chechen Republic and Russia as a whole as the strongest and most powerful region of the world. However, his definition of strength excludes certain individuals. He defines masculinity and femininity in a heteronormative nature, not allowing for any deviation from a traditionalist standpoint. This evokes societal norms that everyone in the Chechen Republic is strong and anyone that deviates from the norm would be dealt with accordingly. An example of cultural subjugation seen in Chechnya is through the treatment of the LGBTQ community and the genocide currently occurring. Over the past few years, many reports have been made that the government tracks down gay people in order to torture or kill them in hopes of purifying Chechnya. Kadyrov has denied time and time again the claim that his government is practicing mass genocides against the LGBTQ community. However, he has been on record stating that gay people are devils and subhuman, and that families and friends of these individuals should commit honor killings to rid the autonomous region of any gay people. Cultural subjugation within Chechnya has been condemned worldwide, calling for immediate intervention within the region.
Since Russia sees the Chechen separatist movement as an internal conflict, many countries are not willing to become overtly involved. However, sometimes, such as during the Russian siege of Grozny in 1999, the international community becomes more vocal with its views of the Chechen-Russian conflict. Critiques of Russian methods rather than its motives in the Second Chechen War was common in the international response, including that of President Clinton. During Peter Boker's testimony before the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, he relayed that Russian forces have indiscriminately and disproportionately bombed and shelled civilian objects, causing heavy civilian casualties. In addition, Chechens attempting to flee to fighting were subject to arbitrary arrests, beatings, and refugee convoys have come under bombardment by Russian forces. This led to a large international backlash and allegations of war crimes, which, while directed at both sides, were largely directed towards Russia. Despite the sentiments that the international community disagreed with methods used against Chechens, international support for Chechen separatism dwindled during the early 2000s in wake of 9/11. This was the outcome of a strategic Russian position that attempted to directly link to Chechen attacks such as the September 1999 bombings to transnational Islamist terrorism.
Professor Kaufman, why do you believe Chechens have been largely ignored in the discussion of the oppression of Muslim minority groups? We pose this question because we found the international attitude towards the Kosovo War to be so strikingly different than that of the Chechen crisis.
Chechens don't have any related ethnic groups, especially in other countries, to spread the word. So, for example, Palestinians have fellow Arabs who are kind of automatically on their side and promote their cause, at least verbally. There's also not a big Chechen diaspora. So other groups, like, for example, Armenians, have a large diaspora in the West. Kurds also have a large diaspora in the West, if we're talking about Muslim groups. When there are human rights violations against Kurds, there's this Kurdish community, ethnic Kurdish community in the West and in other parts of the world who relay the message. Chechens don't have either of those things, so they don't have anybody kind of automatically in their corner. And then there's a final reason, which I think goes back to the aftermath of 9/11, when the United States government under President Bush essentially made an alliance, an anti-terrorist alliance with the Russians. And the terms of that alliance were basically that the US would not criticize Russia for its human rights violations in Chechnya, in exchange for which Russia would support the US in the war on terror against Al-Qaeda. So US government policy, at least for a while, was also more sympathetic to the Russians than to the Chechens. So I think
Irse